last several videos, you have watched as I built a loft 9 feet off the ground in my living room. I have a skylight, I have a reading nook, I have bookshelves. Now I just need a way to get up and down. So in this video, let's build a ladder. Now it isn't just any ladder. In my case, this is actually going to be structural, meaning it's going to be supporting a load and crucial to the structure itself. Since I wanted to build the ladder last, a temporary post has been supporting this corner of the loft since the framing step back in week 1. The first thing I need to do is mark off the locations of the treads on the 2 rails. I'm using solid white oak for everything on this one. Now I want to create a mortise or a pocket for the treads to eventually set into. To do this, I'm going to be using a jig and a router. This is a jig in order to cut in the dados that will hold the stair treads. Also cut out all of the stair treads on the CNC, not only this profile, but also, I don't know if the camera can see that small detail, those 3 lines. Just something nice and elegant and simple. But the idea is to cut in the dados for these stair treads to fit into, just like that. So this jig has a slip so that I'll be able to go down, set it in place, and then use a router with a bushing on it in order to follow along this cutout to cut this groove in perfectly. These cuts need to follow this line. Don't let me mess up. So on this first one, it's a good fit, but let's go ahead and make it a little bit tighter. A tip to do that is just to grab some tape. This is gaff tape, but you can use painter's tape. You can see Jacob's already put in a line in order to try to get this perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and make it a little bit tighter though, so I'm going to add another layer. If you have a 0 clearance plate on your saws or anything, this is a really great method in order to kind of like really fine tune in spacing. Okay, right angle, lines match. So since I was struggling on that one, I'm gonna go ahead and take off just one side of this extra layer of tape in order to adjust it. Oh yeah, do you see that fit? Once I got the fit down perfect with the jig, I could rinse and repeat to cut in all of the others. Not only on the first rail, but also a mirrored one. Easy peasy. I went ahead and rounded over the edges to soften the feel and the look slightly. Then worked on drilling my holes that will allow me to attach it later on. So this bird mouth is what's going to be clamped onto the very top of the loft, and I'm going to be using some spax lags in order to connect these. I want these heads to be sunken flush with this, so I'm just going to use a paddle bit since that's the only thing I have large enough in order to fit the circumference of the head. So don't have to go too deep, just enough, and then I'm going to use this in order to get the angle by eye. Other than the finish, that is it for the rails. So now let's work on the treads. Again, I used my CNC shop to cut not only the profile I wanted, but also the detail, which I kept simple. So now I just needed to do the finish work to each one, which included sanding and rounding over the edges. Now, of course, if you don't have a CNC, then you can make a template of the shape you want and use a router and a flush trim bit to cut it out. However, if you're tackling a large project like this library loft of mine, I would highly recommend looking to see if you have a local CNC shop near you to cut out all your parts. Alrighty, let's move on to finishing. You'll see that I taped off the top of the mortise on each tread to prevent getting finished where I'll later want to glue. For a finish, I'm sticking with my matte look I've done everywhere else on this loft, but this time I'm going with a finish that's intended for high traffic areas. I went with a polyway floor finish here. The unique chemistry of polyway, actually based on byproducts of cheese making, produces a tough coating that resists water and chemicals, but cleans up with soap and water. Plus you get more coverage per gallon than with other finishes. I waited for this to dry, then pulled them out so that I could paint the rails. Please do not give me grief for painting this oak. I don't know where the internet got it in its head that solid wood can't be painted, but traditional furniture makers have been doing it for centuries. An example is a continuous armchair. The back piece is made with white oak because the fibers of white oak are flexible enough to make this bend, but then strong enough to hold it for generations. And then guess what? It traditionally gets painted. Okay, rant over. Now let's throw these two components over in a stressful and intense glue up. Let's go! This is the top. This is the bottom. So these need to go that way. I have a little groove here. I'm going to try to get through this entire process without getting a single one backwards. This was a tricky one, folks, I won't lie. The first rail actually isn't hard. A little bit of wood glue in the mortise, then seating it all the way with a mallet. The hard part comes in when trying to attach the second rail and getting every single tread lined up perfectly. I pulled in Jacob to assist, and even with 2 sets of eyes and hands, it was still a mad dash. Having lots of clamps on hand is helpful, of course. Right now it doesn't look that cool, but on the other side, we got a glimpse. It's gonna look rad. I don't think kids say rad anymore. I left that to set overnight, then declamped it to make the journey from the shop up to the loft. If everything was done right, this should pop right into place.
There you go.
Yeah, that's heated. You see it? That's so cool. Okay, you got it?
Yeah, you want to
Yeah. Crazy. Who put this camera in my way? Yeah. We should probably secure it in place, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, make Jacob so nervous. Before driving in lags, I pre-drilled through the oak alone to make sure it didn't split. Then I sunk the lags into the holes. Hey, check this out while you're here. Jacob originally modeled this at 20 degrees, but then while we were on the job site and we have 3 different ladders around, all of these are around 17 degrees. So then he modified this to be 18 degrees. And you can see here, since that was comfortable, this is comfortable. For securing the bottom, I made a custom plate for holding on to the inside foot to the framing of the floor. And I painted this black again to help blend in. Now we need to take out this post. We got a loft. That is so cool. Here, Jake. Woo! Work. Oh my goodness. All right, you guys are gonna get the first view.
Thank you for your service.
How does it look? That's so exciting. This is a very, very tricky thing. Anything structural, like building a ladder is not difficult. Well, actually it is. Building everything is difficult to a degree, but building a ladder that is structural is even trickier. There's a lot of things in order to account for and solve for here. And I'm not going to dive into the engineering structural side of things because I'm not trying to tell you how to make a ladder structural for your environment. But know that we did consult with 2 structural engineers and ran the calculations by them. Not done yet though. I still had one more tread to install. So the very last tread is actually going to terminate directly onto the final floor. Jake went and cut a rabbet. This is going to clip onto the edge here, and then I'm going to nail it or screw it down. Jacob's going to hold up a straight edge though in order to make sure that it's in line with the previous steps. For attaching it, I went right into the grooves with some small trim head screws. So this thing, the sticky mat, we've been having by the back door where we're bringing materials in and out. But now that this stair or the ladder is in place, we just went through and thoroughly vacuumed the upstairs, and we don't want to keep tracking up dirt. So now I'm moving it over here. I just think this thing is so cool. If you don't want to track in anything into your job site, you can see how it gets dirty. You just peel it back, and it even has anti-slip on the back to stay in place. The last thing I wanted for the ladder was some handrails. Not so much for the going up, but for the going down. This again will be painted white oak, and these little blocks will create a standoff between the ladder rails and the handrails. When I painted these, I put some tape down on where these were going to need to be glued, because glue does not stick to painted surfaces very well. This is long grain to long grain, so it will be a strong connection with that wood glue. I gave it time to set up and then started attaching the rails themselves to the top of them. I again used wood glue here, but then used a nailer to temporarily hold them in place once they were in the right position. I then came back and used a few trim head screws to permanently attach them. Oh, this is so cool. It's crazy how much of a difference those handrails make. And that, my friends, is a custom-made ladder taking me 9 feet into the air to my library loft. It was finally time for me to start populating all the different shelves and spaces I built over the last few weeks. It was so surreal at this point to have all of the components, other than the railing, done. The railing will be glass and ordered custom, so that was out of my control and something I installed later when it arrived. The library loft, though, is something I've been thinking about since I bought this house back in 2017. But as anybody who watches my channel knows, it's not like I'm short of ideas on things I want to build. So I just hadn't gotten around to it. And then you know what happened? I got sick, and this is dangerous. I get cooped up inside, nothing to do but just my mind turning, and then I get ideas. So there I was, laying on the couch, looking up at this big, stupid empty wall that's a giant waste of space, and I thought, I'll just take some rough measurements to start playing with ideas. I started with one version of nothing but bookshelves. Then that led me to another with a nook and cabinets. Then that led to another with a spiral staircase, which led to another and another, until finally I landed on the design that you see before you. I think it all the time, and honestly I hope that the wonder never fades. But being a builder is truly magical. Having the ability to get bored and think up an idea, then bring that idea to life, whether it be a small keychain or a giant library loft, it is the most empowering thing I have ever felt, and I wish it for everybody. This series has been full of big things like framing the loft or cutting a hole in my roof for a skylight. And while those aren't good ones to start a journey, the series also has smaller projects like building a floating bookshelf or an in-the-wall nook. So I hope regardless of your current skill level, you've been able to find something valuable or inspiring from this series. Remember, I did not start here. I started with 0 skills, 0 tools, 0 training, but I had a ton of motivation. So if you're interested in bringing an idea to life, then I encourage you to start. I will wrap up this entire series with a final beauty shot of the finished space, which I am absolutely in love with. I hope that you love it as well. I also hope you have love coming along on the journey. I have no idea what I'm building next, but I'll see you there.